The diner smelled of fresh coffee and buttered toast as Emma wiped the counter for the third time. Her uniform was faded, and the tired look in her eyes revealed a story of long hours and endless struggles. Every day was the same: early mornings, endless orders, and going home with aching feet. Still, she forced a smile for every customer. That smile was a shield, hiding the truth of unpaid bills and a sick mother waiting at home. Emma often wondered if her life would ever change. Dreams of studying, traveling, or even resting without worry felt like luxuries she would never touch. For her, survival came first. And yet, deep down, she hoped for a miracle, something that could break the cycle of exhaustion. That evening, as the diner's clock ticked toward closing time, a man walked in. He didn't belong to this small-town place, anyone could see that. His dark tailored suit, polished shoes, and the quiet authority in his walk made him stand out like a diamond in the dust. People in the diner whispered, trying to guess who he was. But Emma had no time for gossip. She simply grabbed a menu and approached his table. "Good evening. What would you like?" she asked politely, though her voice trembled slightly under his piercing gaze. The man looked up, his eyes sharp yet unreadable. "Just coffee. Black." His tone was short, but there was something about the way he spoke, like he was used to giving orders and having them followed instantly. Emma nodded quickly and hurried to pour the coffee. She didn't know why her heart beat faster when she set the cup down in front of him. The stranger studied her for a moment, then said, "You work hard." Emma blinked, surprised. Customers rarely noticed. I try my best." He leaned back, sipping the coffee slowly. "What's your name?" "Emma." "Emma," he repeated thoughtfully, as if testing the sound. "I'm Adrian." She gave a polite nod and stepped back, unsure what else to say. But Adrian didn't look away. His eyes stayed fixed on her, and it made her uneasy, as though he saw through her carefully built walls. Minutes passed in silence before Adrian finally set his cup down. His voice was calm, but his words carried an unusual weight. "Emma, I have a proposition for you." Her brow furrowed. "A proposition?" "Yes," he said, his tone steady. "I want you to pretend to be my girlfriend." Emma froze. For a second, she thought she had misheard him. "I'm sorry, what?" Adrian didn't flinch. He repeated his words clearly. "Pretend to be my girlfriend. For a few weeks. Nothing more." The diner noise seemed to fade. Emma stared at him, her mouth slightly open, her mind racing. Was this a joke? Who walked into a diner and made such an offer to a waitress he'd just met? "Why would you ask me that?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Adrian leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Because I need someone genuine. Someone the media and investors won't suspect of playing games. My world is full of liars, Emma. I don't trust them. But you're different. I saw it the moment I walked in." Her pulse quickened. This man wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful. She could feel it in the way he spoke, in the way the entire room seemed smaller around him. But his words made no sense. Why her? She was a nobody, just a broke waitress barely holding her life together. "You don't even know me," Emma said, shaking her head. "Why would you think I'd agree to something like that?" Adrian's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Because I'll make it worth your while. I'll pay you enough to cover your bills, your mother's treatment, and more. This deal could change your life." Emma's breath caught. The mention of her mother pierced through her like a blade. How did he know? She wanted to demand answers, but her voice faltered. For years she had begged for a chance, just one chance, to lift her family out of misery. And now, sitting across from her, was a man offering that chance wrapped in mystery and risk. But something about it felt wrong. It sounded too easy, too unreal. "And what happens after it's over?" she asked carefully. "Then we go our separate ways," Adrian replied without hesitation. "It's nothing more than business." Business. The word made her chest tighten. He spoke of love like it was a contract, a performance to be bought and sold. And yet, the desperation in her heart whispered that she couldn't dismiss him so easily. Emma stood frozen, her mind spinning between fear and temptation. This was madness, yet it was also a door she never imagined could open for her. A fake relationship with a millionaire stranger. It sounded like the plot of a story she would laugh at. But in that moment, sitting under the diner's dim lights, with Adrian's steady eyes fixed on her, it was suddenly her reality. Her hands trembled as she gripped the menu tighter. She wanted to say no. She wanted to tell him to leave and never come back. But another part of her, the part that saw her mother coughing alone at night, the pile of bills waiting at home, and the hopeless future she was chained to, whispered, "What if this is your only chance?" Adrian didn't rush her. He simply sat there, patient, sipping his coffee as though he already knew she would give in. Emma swallowed hard. I need time to think." Adrian gave a small nod. "Take the night. But remember, Emma, opportunities like this don't come twice." He placed a sleek business card on the table, then stood and walked out, leaving her trembling in the silence of the nearly empty diner. Emma picked up the card with shaking fingers. His name, Adrian Blackwood, was printed in bold letters. Beneath it, a single phone number. Her world had just changed in one conversation. But was it for better, or for worse? Emma stared at the business card long after Adrian had left the diner. The bold black letters seemed to glow under the dim lights, as if they were daring her to dial the number. She tucked it into her pocket, telling herself she wouldn't call. Yet all night, as she walked home through the cold streets, the thought refused to leave her mind. By the time she reached her small apartment, her mother was already asleep on the couch. The room was quiet except for her mother's shallow breathing and the sound of the old clock ticking on the wall. Emma sat down at the edge of her bed, holding her head in her hands. The offer replayed in her mind again and again. "Pretend to be my girlfriend." It sounded absurd. But then she looked at the pile of unpaid bills on the table. She thought of the medicine her mother sometimes skipped because it was too expensive. A lump formed in her throat. Maybe this wasn't about pride or fear. Maybe this was about survival. The next morning, with trembling fingers, she dialed the number. Adrian answered after the first ring, his deep voice calm, as though he had expected her call. "I'll do it," Emma said quietly. There was a pause on the other end, then his voice came firm and final. "Good. Be ready by 7 tonight. I'll send a car." When the call ended, Emma sat frozen. It was too late to turn back now. At exactly 7, a sleek black car pulled up outside her apartment building. The driver stepped out, wearing a suit sharper than anything Emma had ever seen. He opened the door without a word, and Emma climbed in, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside, the car smelled of leather and luxury. She had never sat in anything so polished, so silent. As the city lights blurred past the window, Emma couldn't help but feel she was being carried into a completely different world. When they arrived at a grand hotel, Emma's breath caught. Golden chandeliers glowed in the lobby, and the marble floors gleamed like glass. People in gowns and tuxedos moved with elegance, their laughter echoing through the air. Emma felt her throat tighten. She didn't belong here. And then she saw him. Adrian stood near the entrance, tall and composed in a black tailored suit that looked like it had been made just for him. The crowd seemed to part around him, as if no one dared step too close. His presence alone commanded attention. When his eyes found hers, a faint smile tugged at his lips. "You're late," he said softly when she reached him. Emma began, but he didn't let her finish. "Don't apologize. Just remember, from now on, you belong by my side. No fear, no hesitation." His voice was low, but his words struck like an order. Before she could respond, Adrian took her hand. His grip was firm, steady, and without asking, he led her through the glittering crowd. Emma felt every eye on her. Whispers floated around. Who was this girl in a simple black dress walking with Adrian Blackwood, the millionaire every headline adored and feared? Emma's stomach twisted, but Adrian leaned slightly toward her. "Smile. Remember, they're watching." She forced a smile, though her hands trembled. Cameras flashed, glasses clinked, and for the first time in her life, Emma stood in a place where everything sparkled, except her. They reached a table where a group of men and women sat, each one powerful and perfectly dressed. Adrian introduced Emma with a smooth tone. "This is Emma, my girlfriend." The word sent a shiver down her spine. Girlfriend. Fake girlfriend. But nobody else knew that. To the room full of strangers, she was suddenly someone important, someone who belonged to Adrian Blackwood. Throughout the evening, Adrian played the part with chilling perfection. He placed his hand gently on her back, poured her a drink, and leaned close whenever he spoke to her. His expression never cracked, his act flawless. But every time their eyes met, Emma felt a strange tension, like he was hiding more than just wealth behind those cold eyes. At one point, when she stumbled over a question from one of the investors, Adrian smoothly stepped in, his hand tightening over hers. "She doesn't need to answer that," he said firmly, silencing the table. His protective tone shocked her. For a man who claimed this was only business, he seemed more invested than she expected. Later, when the evening ended and the car drove her back to her apartment, Emma finally found the courage to ask, "Why me? Out of all the women you could have chosen, why a waitress from a diner?" Adrian looked at her, his face unreadable in the shadows of the car. "Because I needed someone real. And you were the only one who didn't look at me like a walking bank account." His words left her silent. Real. Was that all she was to him, a useful tool in his carefully crafted lie? Or was there something more hidden beneath his cold mask? As the car pulled up to her apartment, Adrian's voice lowered. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, things get more complicated." Emma stepped out, her heart racing. She leaned against the door of her apartment building, clutching her bag to her chest. She had stepped into a world she never knew, a world of luxury and lies. And though she had agreed to play the part, one question haunted her as she looked up at the night sky. How long could she pretend before the line between fake and real disappeared? Emma's days began to blur into a strange rhythm she had never known before. One moment she was serving coffee at the diner, the next she was stepping out of a black car with Adrian by her side, cameras flashing in her face. The girl who once worried about every penny was now sitting at dinner tables with people who wore diamonds like they were nothing more than glass. At first, she reminded herself again and again, "This is fake. It's just a deal." But the more time she spent with Adrian, the harder it became to keep the line clear. He was cold in public, sharp with his words, his eyes giving nothing away. Yet when they were alone, even for a moment, Emma caught glimpses of something different. Small acts that didn't fit the role of a man who only cared about business. Like when he noticed she was shivering and quietly draped his jacket over her shoulders, or when he lowered his voice and asked if she was overwhelmed by the flashing cameras. Those moments unsettled her. If everything was just an act, why did he bother with such details? One evening, Adrian brought her to a charity gala. The room glowed with chandeliers, violins played softly in the background, and the air smelled of expensive perfume. As they entered, Adrian's hand brushed hers. He leaned close enough for only her to hear. "Tonight, they'll test you. Don't let them see your nerves." Emma nodded, her chest tightening. She didn't belong here. She wasn't trained for this world of polished smiles and cruel whispers. Sure enough, as the night went on, questions flew at her from every corner. "Where did you two meet? What does she do? How long have you been together?" Emma forced answers, careful not to reveal the truth. Every time she faltered, Adrian stepped in, his words smooth and confident, his hand steadying hers under the table. To everyone else, they looked like a perfect couple. To Emma, the act was starting to feel dangerously real. Later that night, when the crowd thinned, Emma slipped away to catch her breath on a balcony. The cool air felt like freedom compared to the suffocating hall. She rested her hands on the railing, trying to steady herself. Behind her, a voice spoke softly. "You're doing better than I expected." She turned to see Adrian standing there, his face calm but his eyes watching her closely. "I feel like I'm lying every second," she admitted. "I don't know how you do it so easily." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Because I've been lying my whole life." The word struck her. For a second, his mask slipped, and Emma saw something raw in his expression, a pain buried deep, hidden from the world. She wanted to ask what he meant, but before she could, he straightened, his cold armor snapping back into place. "Don't forget why you're here," he said firmly. "This is business. Nothing more." Emma nodded, but inside, her heart whispered something different. His words said business, but his eyes said something else. She just couldn't understand what. The next days grew more complicated. The media began publishing pictures of them together, headlines screaming about Adrian Blackwood's mysterious new girlfriend. Strangers on the street recognized her, whispering as she passed. Some people admired her, others mocked her. The pressure was crushing, but Adrian remained unshaken, always calm, always in control. One night, after another exhausting event, Emma finally gathered the courage to ask him directly. "Why are you really doing this, Adrian? What are you hiding?" He paused, staring at her for a long moment. His voice was quiet when he finally spoke. "You don't need to know. Knowing me too much will only hurt you." Her chest tightened at the warning, but the way he said it wasn't cruel, it was almost protective, as if he were trying to shield her from a truth too heavy to bear. Emma lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment. She tried to remind herself again and again, it was fake. It was all fake. But why, then, did her heart ache every time she remembered the flicker of pain in his eyes? The line between what was pretend and what was real was beginning to blur, and Emma was terrified of where it might lead. The days turned into weeks, and Emma's life no longer felt like her own. She was caught between two worlds, the simple diner where she once worked and the glittering halls where Adrian's shadow followed her everywhere. But even with all the luxury, her heart was restless. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he wasn't telling her. Every time she asked about his past, Adrian brushed her questions aside. "Focus on the present," he would say, his voice firm, his eyes closing the door to deeper truths. Yet Emma noticed things, the way his jaw tightened when someone mentioned family, the guarded silence whenever he was left alone, the faint sadness that flickered across his face when no one was watching. One evening, after another long event, Emma found herself sitting with him in the back of the car. The city lights flashed by outside, but inside the silence was heavy. She turned to him, her courage rising. "Adrian," she said softly, "why this deal? Why pretend at all? You could have anyone, why drag a stranger into this?" For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. But then, without looking at her, he spoke. "Because I needed someone who had nothing to gain. Someone who wasn't already part of this world of greed." Emma frowned. "But why? What are you hiding from?" His eyes finally met hers, sharp and unreadable. "The truth doesn't matter, Emma. What matters is that you keep playing your part." His words should have ended the conversation, but they only deepened her curiosity. Something was broken in him, she could feel it. And now she wanted to know what. The answer came sooner than she expected. A week later, Adrian took her to a private dinner at one of his estates. Unlike the public events, this place was quiet, almost lonely. The grand dining hall felt cold, the walls lined with portraits of people Emma didn't recognize. As they ate, Emma's eyes drifted to a large painting at the end of the hall. A stern-looking man with the same sharp jawline as Adrian stared down at them from the frame. "Is that your father?" she asked carefully. Adrian's hand froze around his glass. For a moment, his mask slipped. His eyes darkened, and his voice was low. "Yes. That's him." Emma waited, sensing more behind the answer. Adrian finally set the glass down and leaned back in his chair. "My father built everything you see. The company, the wealth, the name. And he destroyed anyone who stood in his way, including me." Emma's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Adrian's lips curled bitterly. He never believed in love, only power. He arranged marriages like business deals, treated people as pawns. When I refused to marry the woman he chose, he cut me out, told the world I was weak, incapable of running the empire. Emma's heart ached at the bitterness in his tone. "So this deal with me is to prove him wrong," Adrian finished sharply. "The investors, the board, even the media, they all watch me like vultures. They want to see if I can survive without him. So I needed a partner, someone who could stand beside me without playing their own games." Emma sat in silence, her chest heavy. Suddenly, the pieces fit together. His coldness, his obsession with control, his refusal to show weakness, it all traced back to a father who had broken him. "But why not tell the truth?" she asked softly. Adrian shook his head. "The truth doesn't matter in my world. Only appearances." Emma lowered her gaze. She had entered this arrangement thinking it was about money, about survival. But now she realized she was standing in the middle of a war she hadn't chosen, a war between Adrian and the ghost of his father's power. And yet, despite everything, she couldn't stop herself from feeling for him. Behind his harsh exterior was a man scarred by betrayal, a man who had forgotten how to trust. That night, as they stood by the doorway before leaving, Adrian leaned closer, his voice quiet but firm. "Don't let anyone know this is fake, Emma. If they find out, everything collapses. And I don't lose." His eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time, Emma saw not the cold millionaire, but a wounded man fighting to survive in a cage of wealth and lies. Her heart pounded. She had promised herself she wouldn't fall for him. But now, she wasn't so sure if she could keep that promise. Emma thought she had finally understood Adrian. His walls, his coldness, his hunger for control, it all made sense after hearing about his father. She told herself she could handle the deal, that she could play her role without letting her heart get too involved. But deep inside, she already knew the truth, something was changing between them. Days passed, and their act as a couple grew more convincing. At social gatherings, Adrian would place his hand gently on her back, whisper things only she could hear, and smile at her in a way that looked so real it made Emma's heart flutter. Sometimes she even forgot it was an act. But just as she began to feel comfortable in this strange new life, something happened that shattered her sense of safety. It was a charity gala, one of the biggest of the season. The ballroom glowed with crystal chandeliers, and every wealthy family in town was present. Emma wore a silver gown that Adrian had chosen for her, and as they entered, the room seemed to pause, eyes following them like they were the center of the universe. Emma held onto Adrian's arm, keeping her nerves hidden behind a polite smile. She told herself she was getting used to it. But then, across the room, she noticed a woman staring at them, staring at her. The woman was beautiful, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to burn with anger. She walked straight toward them, her heels clicking like a drumbeat on the polished floor. "Adrian," the woman said coolly, ignoring Emma completely. "So this is your little game." Emma froze. Adrian's face hardened, the smile gone. "This isn't the time, Victoria." Victoria. The name sent a chill through Emma. She remembered hearing whispers at past events about a powerful businesswoman who had once been close to Adrian. Victoria turned her sharp gaze toward Emma. "And who is she? The replacement? Or just a distraction?" The entire room seemed to lean closer, curious eyes watching the confrontation. Emma's stomach tightened. She didn't know what to say, but Adrian spoke first. "She is none of your concern," he said firmly, pulling Emma closer to him. But Victoria only smirked. "Oh, Adrian. Always so proud, always pretending. Do you really think no one will find out the truth?" Emma's heart stopped. Her hands trembled slightly against Adrian's arm. Did Victoria know? Adrian's jaw tightened. "Be careful with your words." Victoria leaned closer, her voice low but sharp enough for Emma to hear. "Secrets have a way of coming out. And when they do, your little arrangement will crumble. Everyone will know she doesn't belong here." Emma's chest ached, her head spinning. Was Victoria bluffing, or did she actually know their relationship was fake? The moment passed when other guests approached, breaking the tension. Victoria walked away gracefully, but her warning lingered like a knife hanging above Emma's head. Later that night, when they were finally alone in Adrian's car, Emma couldn't hold back anymore. "Who is she?" Emma asked, her voice unsteady. Adrian sighed, staring out the window. "Victoria was someone my father wanted me to marry. She had power, money, and influence. For him, she was the perfect choice. For me, she was a prison." Emma's throat tightened. "And she knows about us." Adrian's eyes flicked toward her, sharp and cold. "Maybe. Or maybe she's just trying to scare you. That's what she does." "But what if she tells everyone?" Emma whispered. Adrian's voice was hard. "Then everything I've built will fall apart. The investors will walk away, the press will destroy me, and my father will win." The words hit Emma like a storm. For the first time, she saw how fragile this act really was. One wrong move, one whisper, and the whole illusion could break. But there was something else troubling her, something deeper. The way Victoria had looked at Adrian wasn't just business. There had been something personal, something Emma couldn't quite name. As they reached the mansion, Emma stepped out of the car, her chest heavy with doubt. She had agreed to this deal for survival, but now she was caught in a dangerous game of lies, power, and secrets. And worse, her heart was no longer safe. That night, lying awake in the guest room Adrian had given her, Emma replayed the gala in her mind. Victoria's voice echoed again and again, "Secrets have a way of coming out." She hugged herself, torn between fear and curiosity. What secret was Adrian hiding still? And what would happen to her if the truth came crashing down? For the first time since this all began, Emma wasn't just worried about playing her role. She was worried about her future, her heart, and whether she had walked into a trap she could never escape. The days after the gala were filled with silence and tension. Emma kept seeing Victoria's smirk in her mind, her words echoing like a warning she couldn't escape. Secrets have a way of coming out. Adrian tried to act as if nothing had happened. He buried himself in meetings and business calls, walking through the mansion like a man with too many enemies and not enough time. But Emma noticed his restlessness. He didn't sleep well. He barely ate. And when their eyes met, it was like he wanted to say something, but always held back. Emma couldn't live in that silence any longer. She needed answers. One evening, she found him in his study, sitting at a large desk covered with papers. The fire burned low in the fireplace, casting his face in shadows. "Adrian," she said quietly, stepping inside. "I can't do this anymore." He looked up, his expression unreadable. "Do what?" "This," she said, her voice trembling. "Pretending, hiding, acting like none of this matters. Victoria's words, the lies, it's too much. I deserve to know the truth." Adrian leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on her. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackling of the fire. Then, slowly, he spoke. "You're right," he said. His voice was lower than she'd ever heard it. "You do deserve the truth. But once you know, Emma, you can't go back." Her heart raced. "Then tell me." Adrian stood and walked toward the window, staring out at the dark night. "My father didn't just want me to marry Victoria. He tied the entire company's future to it. If I refused, the board could strip me of control. And if I fought back, he threatened to expose something I've kept hidden for years." Emma stepped closer, her chest tight. "What secret?" Adrian turned, his eyes sharp but filled with pain. "That I'm not his only son. I have a brother, an illegitimate heir he kept hidden from the world. If the truth comes out, everything I own, everything I've built, could be ripped away and handed to him." Emma gasped. The weight of his words crashed over her. "And Victoria knows?" Adrian nodded. "She was his choice to keep the secret safe. That's why he wanted me to marry her, so she'd protect his empire after him. But I refused. I couldn't give her my life, not after everything she's done." Emma stared at him, her mind spinning. She had thought this was just a game of appearances, but now she saw the deeper layers: family betrayal, hidden heirs, power struggles. No wonder Adrian lived behind walls. "But why bring me into this?" she whispered. Adrian's eyes softened for the first time. "Because you weren't part of this world. You weren't playing a role for money or power. You were real. And I needed that, even if it was just pretend." Emma's heart pounded. She had promised herself not to fall for him, but now her chest ached with something she could no longer deny. Before she could speak, Adrian stepped closer, his voice low but urgent. "Emma, if you want to walk away, do it now. Before the storm hits. Because when it does, it will destroy everything in its path, including you." Emma looked at him, her eyes shining. "I should walk away. I should save myself. But Adrian, I don't want to." For the first time, Adrian's mask cracked. His hand reached for hers, and in that moment, she saw not the powerful millionaire, but the broken man beneath, desperate for someone to stay. The storm arrived faster than either of them expected. The very next day, the newspapers exploded with headlines: "Mysterious woman exposed. Who is Adrian Blackwood's girlfriend?" Photos of Emma filled the front pages. Reporters camped outside the mansion. Whispers spread through the city like wildfire. At first, Emma thought Adrian would be furious. But instead, he stood tall, his arm around her as he faced the cameras. His voice was calm but firm. "Yes," he said. "This is Emma. She is with me. And no matter what stories you tell, she's not going anywhere." Emma's chest tightened. It was still part of their deal, yet something about his words felt real, too real. Behind the cameras, she caught a glimpse of Victoria watching, her expression unreadable. But for the first time, Emma didn't feel powerless. She felt strong. Because whatever happened next, she knew Adrian wasn't hiding behind her anymore. He was standing with her. And though their story had started as a lie, Emma realized the most shocking twist of all. Somewhere along the way, the fake love had turned into something real.